I feel like I wanted to say something before we started, a preamble, as it were.
Right.
But I have no amble. We're just gonna have to deal with the amble. Let's just do the amble. As you know, this is the measure of an episode, where it is our continuing mission to explore what makes Star Trek genuine Star Trek, and not just hijinks comedy. I'm Paul.
And I'm Jonathan. And we do this using three criteria. And they are, the first one is there sci-fi unique or novel to the plot? Is it required? The second one, is that sci-fi explored? And the third one, is there a moral or ethical dilemma that a character faces? Somewhere in the episode. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Paul. And this week we watched Strange New Worlds. Jonathan, Season 2, Episode 5, Charades.
Charades.
And I will read the blurb.
Do you you remember the movie My Fellow Americans, that blockbuster classic?
Kind of sounds familiar a little bit.
I think
comedy.
Yeah, I think it was Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau like running for president, like they were competing against each other, and he says something like, you know, he's like this criminal mastermind, and he goes, and I had to keep up this whole facade. So anyway.
And Facade has like a little, it's got a weird character in there, doesn't it? Maybe?
Yeah. It's got that little C comma.
C, comma.
It's got that little C.
Comma.
And that.
There are people who talk in punctuation. I don't like it. I don't even like, what
do you mean? Didn't you just do it?
I understand. I was making fun of them when I do it. Whenever I do it, I make fun of people.
Gotcha.
But there are people who, well, you know, so I understand when you say, that's the end of the road, period. That's the end of the conversation, period. I'm like, okay. Punctuation is usually implied in speech, but I'll let it slide. I understand what you're trying to do. It's when they type it out. Mm-hmm. It's like when you see that in a blog post, what is it, 1999? Like a social media post where they're trying to be emphatic in their statement, and they say, and I'll have no more of this, period. They type out the period.
Right. I see what you're saying. Okay. Not as in you speak in a way that implies that there is punctuation within your dialogue, but as in you are dictating the punctuation that should be there.
No, it's there. Normally there is a period at the end of that sentence. Okay. And then they type out the period. They type out the word period with another period. Right. So there's too many periods in that sentence.
Okay. Right.
It irritates me.
So what about when you say period to like emphasize it? Does that part irritate you too?
It irritates me, but I'll let it slide.
Okay.
Right? If you can't get your point across emphatically enough without having to onomatopoeia punctuation.
Onomatopoeia a silence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just don't, because it's usually done not so much emphatically, but kind of in I don't know how to say it. It's the same thing as when people start a post with, I don't think that's going to work. You know, that kind of thing. I hate it. I don't know, what do you call that? It's all over social media, and I hate it. It's like implying, it's like sarcasm.
Right.
It's like you're pretending to think about it, but in fact, you've already formulated your thought.
Well, yeah, you're kind of sharing the process that you had behind the keyboard.
You're almost marginalizing what they're saying by saying by typing it out.
Yes, that is definitely the point to it.
I hate it.
They're being condescending, which means
we should
talking
filter
down to
all
people.
that out. Yeah, exactly. They're being condescending. Let's filter all that out. What are we talking about? Oh, I haven't even read the blurb yet. Speaking of accurate punctuation, here we go. Here's the blurb. Shuttle accident needs to sparks Vulcan. DNA being removed by aliens. Making a fully human and completely unprepared to face to Prince. Oh, they capitalized Prince. So the Siri thought I was talking about the artist formerly known as Prince.
Right.
Or rather, the artist formerly known as the artist known as Prince.
Well, yeah, like when you say it now, the artist formerly known as Prince, like because he's dead, it just takes on a whole new weight to it.
Like everybody forgot about him.
Like, yeah,
already.
It's like the corpse formerly known as Prince.
That tree formerly known as Prince. be a seedling, though. Family during an important ceremonial dinner. Oh, so I got that last part probably pretty good.
Right?
I think if anybody has not seen this episode, they're not going to know.
It sounds like you had a stroke. Like even I had a hard time understanding what was going on there.
I know. Yeah.
All right, I got to say right off
yeah.
the bat, like this episode, the whole did not match the parts. I felt like this episode, I felt tonally was all over the place, but by the end, I enjoyed it, and so like I had a really hard time with this episode, kind of for that reason. I was taken out of it all over the place, but going along for the ride, I enjoyed it for what they were trying to do, but also what they were trying to do. It felt like there were two teams in the writer's room, and they could not come together on this episode.
So I agree. I think if I were to decode what happened with this episode, which I will agree, I thought it was an enjoyable episode. I feel like what they wanted to do was they wanted to have an interesting episode where Spock loses his entire vulcanality and is only human, and what would happen. And they had wonderful performances by everybody.
Yes.
Right? Everybody did a bang-up job, and that's what was probably the most enjoyable for me about this episode. Wasn't so much the writing, but just everybody was on point and showed up for the.
Everybody was on board for what was going on, right?
Yeah. The problem is they realized after they concocted this whole thing is that they were writing a Star Trek episode, and they can't just have a fun hijinks romantic comedy. Where, it's sort of like the same thing. The one that comes to mind is where Jack Black sees people for their heart and not their outer shape. It's like that kind of thing where, and that kind of movie, you can just have it happen. There's thunder and lightning one morning, and then he all of a sudden, that's how you handle that.
Right.
Or in Fred Savage, Judge Reinhold, vice versa, where they're...
That blockbuster classic, right?
Where it just happens, right? And that's how you handle it. It's never talked about. I mean, the biggest thing about that one is Big, where there was actually a mechanism that they had to
there is a
explore.
MacGuffin.
Yeah. But in this case, it happens to be a Star Trek episode. So they're like, well, shit, we need a reason for all this stuff. And so they had to invent this B plot, which was a very somber B plot in the case of Nurse Chapel.
Right.
Yeah, it just felt very like Spock was dead and she had to bring him back to life. I guess in a way he was. I mean, the premise that you had this guy who is Spock, who is normally just sort of oblivious and condescending, thinks humans smell bad, and doesn't particularly seem interested in participating. It feels like his participation with everything is obligatory. So you have this not very fun guy, and then all of a sudden, human Spock is actually kind of fun to be around. He is emphatic. There's that word again, and he's
period.
Yeah, he is charming. He's fun to watch, and so it was like, well, we want the old Spock back. Where's the not fun person? Let's get him back. So I didn't like that part. I felt like they could have come with a better way to do that. But what was I saying? Yeah. So I think that's where the holes didn't fit, is where you had a very somber science fiction-y Spock is dead plot line, and then you have the fun comedy plot line, which was kind of the A plot.
Right. Yeah. And I kind of got what Chapel was saying at the end, where, she was saying like, this isn't who we know, which that's fair. And that's a valid reason to be doing what she's doing. But you're right. Like everybody is enjoying this human Spock, and they seem to like kind of be enjoying taking care of him in every way, like helping him work through his emotions, helping him pretend to be a Vulcan. Like nobody felt like this was a burden, and nobody felt like he was less of who he was because he lost his Vulcan.
No, I think no one suffered by his loss of vulcanality, right?
Yeah. I mean, they found when he was first going through his emotions, they found them all to be kind of irritating, like a person who doesn't know how to read the room, which he didn't.
Right. I mean, and they explain that.
Right.
It's just like, oh, you're kind of a teenager right now, but that's going to go away because you get used to it. That's kind of how it works,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
But there was no consequences for Spock not being Spock other than Nurse Chapel was sad.
Right. And it made it
And-
awkward at the dinner.
Right.
Yeah.
Which was actually a big surprise to me. I didn't think that they would do that.
Sorry, I do want to say I was disappointed, but I appreciated how they dealt with his ears. Like he's going to go back to himself emotionally immediately, but the physical changes will take more time, because I was really hoping that when he switched back to being a hybrid, he would have Vulcan ears on Vulcan ears. Like I was really hoping that would happen.
Yeah. I just thought that when he goes to pull off the ears, I wasn't really paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
But they're so shittily put on that how did nobody notice that these were fake ears?
Right.
You can see the line, right?
Yeah.
But I felt like there should have been a scene where we missed Spock as regular Spock, where
Yes.
he was on the bridge, where he, normally, I guess traditionally, Spock's role is one of solving problems.
Mm-hmm.
He always has the idea or has all the information and can parse all of the information so quickly that he can concoct a
Right. I mean, he's the proto data. Yeah.
Yeah. So we didn't have that. And so to me, it would have felt more cathartic once Spock got Spock back. If we felt that. The only reason we didn't feel that was because, or the only person who felt that was Nurse Chapel.
Yeah. But I think to your point, I feel like it would have been a great element to the episode if there was something that they were trying to kind of decide, what the best choice was, where it is kind of a trolley choice, and because Spock can't logic it out, they really are, they're stuck, Spock is too emotionally invested in whatever they're trying to decide, and he can't just give the stoic, unemotional response.
In my opinion, I felt like the whole dinner with the in-laws, it was well done. I felt like the in-law mother-in-law was adequately hateable, and the father-in-law was adequately annoying, etc. Who was smiling a lot. For Vulcan, he did a lot of smiling. I don't like these types of episodes, obviously. I don't like these things where nothing is happening. It's just hijinks, right?
Well, with the other part too,
bored.
I mean, to speak to the series as a whole, like this is the second episode where Spock gets stuck in hijinks revolving around his wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
I enjoy these episodes. Star Trek does have goofy episodes here and there, but it's fun when it's with the crew and not, why does this always happen to Spock?
Because he's the most fun. Everybody loves Spock, right? Just how everybody loves Data.
Right. Well,
Everybody
and
loves
it's,
Spock.
and it's fun to take Spock and put him in these situations where a Vulcan would really struggle and somebody else.
Right.
But no, other people would struggle too.
Well, and when you want to do a hijinks episode where there's comedy, everybody's a straight man in Star Trek. So you kind of need to go after the person who's the least straight man, and that person would be Spock, so we can all make fun of him.
Just saying that out loud, this episode I think would have been, I feel like it would have hit every beat the way that we were the way that we're kind of talking about, if they had done it the other way around. If Nurse Chapel had become a hybrid.
Or she became a Vulcan.
Yeah.
Just make her a Vulcan.
Right. And
That'd have been better. You're right. That'd have been way better. Oh, why didn't they do that?
And then, it would have been the logical choice to go back to the Kirkovians, which, again, if you're going to name an alien race, you really shouldn't name them Kirk.
The Kirkovians.
Yeah.
It'd be great if he was sitting on a throne somewhere.
Right. It always baffles me, like when they do that kind of thing where they pick names that are really close to other characters' names, and it's like you have 26 options. Like, why are you throwing those together in that manner to make a name that is already in the show? But anyway, it would have given him a logical reason to go back to the Kirkovians. It would have given him like a logical survivor's guilt that he would have had to work through, and just being a Vulcan, he would have just he would have moved forward with it as logic and had, there could have been that conversation where like, no, what you're feeling is known as survivor's guilt, and like him going through denial for it.
Yeah. So I had a couple of problems, and this speaks to what you're saying just now. I had a couple problems with this episode. The first one was they were doing another character episode. This is totally a character episode for Chapel, and it's a character episode for Spock. And I'm fine with there being discrete characters on a show. Obviously, you need that. But I feel like they're sacrificing what makes Star Trek to do that. And I don't like, this is where I'm coming down on this. I feel like, am I the only one who feels this way? Who, if you're going to make a Star Trek show, am I supposed to be okay that it is Star Trek in name only? Or rather, it's moving away from what made Star Trek Star Trek. Like, should I just shut up? Because it feels like they want it to feel like the old shows. I mean, this was the one that we were championing as the closest to Star Trek of all the new Trek last season. Mm-hmm. But should I just shut up about this? Because it does feel like, can you name any episode of Next Gen where it was this emotional and they leaned so heavily on who loves who and this love triangle of which T'Pring is unaware entirely. And I don't know, it just never happens. And I feel like the whole scenario where they have to go into this other timeline or whatever they went into, time portal dimensional thing, and talked to the alien, it felt ancillary, almost peripheral, that they had to go and talk to this new person who's like, well, I need my boyfriend back. This is
right.
This is what's going on. My boyfriend is turned into somebody I don't like. Can we fix that? And meanwhile, there's this completely new, in terms of our mission, seeking out new life, et cetera, et cetera. This is it. I think Spock should take a back door. What? No. Well, he can if he wants, but he should also take a back seat to this, because look at this amazing thing that we just found. Like, so many amazing things just happened, right? And I don't know, it just fell flat to me in terms of, oh my God, you guys are supposed to be, this is exactly what you came here for, and you're complaining about your boyfriend. So that's sort of where it lost me.
Sure.
And I felt like you could have explored that while doing all of this Spock stuff, because you have Spock on the bridge, and you have to have him try and put aside his emotions that he's trying to deal with and be Spock. Because it's my understanding that he didn't forget all of the Vulcan-ness of himself. He just lost his Vulcan DNA.
Well, yeah, he lost the Vulcan ability to suppress his emotions. Yeah.
Well, he also lost just that side of his genome, but he didn't. But the weird part is there's a couple of scenes where they're teaching him how to do Vulcan things.
Right.
So why would they have to do that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Well, so I guess what I could say to that is being having the Vulcan DNA, that sort of thing just came natural. And
how to pick up a teapot? Like he didn't remember like the stuff like.
That's fair. I was thinking more of the bridge part where they were teaching him how to elocute. But
But he doesn't remember that? Like, what does he have?
No,
Vulcan amnesia?
Kind of. It's one of those things where like you were just doing it, so he didn't know how he was doing it because that's who he was. And so he needed other people to kind of show him the mannerisms that just came natural to him, because he wasn't aware that he was doing. I mean, he even said, like, do I sound like this? And I feel like that's that.
Yeah, that's fair.
But you're right about the teapot. Like, it should not have, like, been brand new to him that the teapot was hot.
Well, they automatically assumed that he forgot all of this stuff. They had to reteach him how to be a Vulcan. Like, he was never a Vulcan, or that his twin brother, who was all human, had to take his place. Like, I feel like this has been a movie already.
Right.
Where your twin brother has to go sit down for your dinner when you meet the parents, and he's sick, or he's got to go do something, and he's not there. And so twin brothers, and then, hilarity ensues.
Right. So I think that I think you're right. I think that the plots should have flipped around, because it shouldn't have been a highlight on Spock's now disability. It should have been like that is causing a hindrance to whatever the A plot is. But to speak to your thing about relationships, having never given it any thought and maybe exploring it more, this isn't the case. But I think when Star Trek became more serial, so when we're looking at DS9 and Enterprise, like Voyager really tried to go back to the episodic thing. And it shows when they very clearly talk about their limited supplies on things, but miraculously they, shoot out like 128 photon torpedoes or something when they only had a cache
Well,
of
and it still
39.
looks like a great place to live.
Right. Yeah. It did not get progressively worse as the show went on, which was Brian Fuller's idea, and that would have been amazing, but whatever. Executive producers got in the way. But if you think on like DS9, where it did have story arcs, like there was the whole Kira Odo and Kira in multiple relationships, which I know you don't care about, but is definitely an element of Star Trek once it became serial. Enterprise with T'Pol and Trip, I think. Pretty sure.
Yeah. So you're right. I mean, I guess I just don't like this part. I don't like that.
Right.
It gets in the way. I feel like it feels like you're missing an opportunity to do those things, to have those character studies, but also have them study their character through the course of a science fiction plot.
Right.
And they had the opportunity in this episode because they could have had them trying to figure out as a group how to fix this problem where Spock needs his mojo back. Right?
And I think that is a little bit bigger of the issue, is that it feels like they're highlighting one character at a time with less for the other characters in a way that's more noticeable than it was with Next Generation. I mean, having gone back to some of our older episodes with Interface, like Geordi's the highlight of that episode. Like the focus is on him and everything that he's going through, but it didn't feel. It felt like every character was still involved in the plot, and it wasn't just Geordi going through this on his own.
Yeah. Almost like they're a crew.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so going back to the plot line and the kind of stuff that I would want to see, the Krakowians,
Yep.
Kirkovians. I'm sure there's that word has 19 Ks in it somehow.
Right.
But
and 23 of them are silent.
Yeah. I would love to see that episode, how there's this ancient advanced race that somehow disappeared and they need to find out why. Perhaps it's the giant glowing hole in space sitting right above the surface of the moon. I would start there in terms of where the civilization might have gone, and then work your way out.
Right, like it just vanished, and we have no idea how. By the way, there's this interdimensional black hole whirlpool,
totally visible above the surface of the moon.
Right.
Probably start there, but I want to see that episode, like where they go down the surface. I mean, they'd have to kind of perhaps make the wormhole a little bit less ostentatious. Mm-hmm. A little bit more hidden, but how about, a couple of episodes you spend on that where it's like, where did these Krakowians go? Mm-hmm. What happened to them? Why did they disappear? Because we have that on Earth. We have like giant civilizations that were way ahead of their time.
Right.
That just disappeared. And
completely.
They tell us, it's like, well, they ran out of lumber. It's like,
okay.
Yeah. Okay. They ran out of lumber. They built these giant pyramids and they're smart. Obviously, they're like, well, we're out of lumber, so I guess we should all commit suicide.
Well, and it's not even that they just ran out of lumber, or they built pyramids. They built towns on the top of mountains.
Yeah.
And steep mountains, and we're just going, we're just saying, oh, there was a virus.
So anyway, why not start that? Like, just that one line. She has one line when they're talking about, when it's like a voiceover or something, when she says why they're there or something like that. And I was like, oh, that's intriguing. Mm-hmm. Why don't we go there? But they don't go there. They don't go there. For some reason, they're trying to make Vulcans hateable. Most of the Vulcans on this show are villains.
Kind of asshats, yeah.
And that's not fun.
Right.
I don't like that.
Right.
They're nice. Just like there are hot Bajorans, for Kira. Well, it's kind of only for Kira. Bakira? What? Bajorans.
I mean, why not? Like, you've got, every Vulcan has a T apostrophe, so just make every Bajoran with a B apostrophe. Yeah. Yeah, there was also the Bajoran Dabo girl that Nog started. No, not Nog.
That's right. Yeah, no, Nog was dating, I think.
I know, but Nog is the young one. It was Quark's brother, Rom.
That's Nog. Oh, wrong. Rom?
Rom, yeah, with an M.
Rom.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we can all, like, I'm sure there are nice Vulcans, or I guess not nice, but good Vulcans, or just not asshat Vulcans.
Right, Vulcans that tolerate and are pleasant to be around humans. Yeah.
Yeah, or just neutral, I guess.
Right.
Just interesting.
Yeah, they're just people, right? Well, they're just Vulcans.
Speaking of Vulcans, so they were making Spock out to be somewhat OCD. They had that thing with Kirk where he wants him to clean up after himself, and Spock, or Vulcan Spock, just cleans up afterwards because he is able to control himself. But human Spock does this; he lashes out. And I'm wondering, are they making Spock OCD, or is the implication that all Vulcans are OCD because they're logical?
But this even goes back to your previous point about him forgetting his Vulcan side. Like, it kind of doesn't matter whether or not Spock as a hybrid is OCD, because that would have been removed from him. Like, I could see Spock craving order, but then on the human side, like, unless it's a shadow of a memory of wanting that order and being super irritated that it was there, like, he shouldn't care. Or this or this shows that the Vulcan side is actually suppressing the human OCD that we were not aware of.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I guess if all Vulcans were OCD, then he wouldn't have cared. So maybe you're right. Maybe Spock is OCD, which has nothing to do with being Vulcan.
Right.
Well, I guess it does in that it's just percolating up enough when he gets annoyed,
Yeah. But what I want to know is, like, we have never seen those security officers sitting around the ready room before. So why were they there to hold him back? And, like, why would they think to hold him back in his area? Like, did he flip over his chair when he stood up to know that he was lashing out?
Well, Worf is in the meetings. I don't mean in this show. I mean, typically in the next gen conferences, he would be in there. So it's logical to assume that there would be security in there, I suppose. I mean, perhaps the amount of security personnel is commensurate to the size of the room. And
we've seen how big these rooms are, right?
Yeah. It's a gigantic gymnasium. And so they need, 9 or 10 security guards for each exit. Mm-hmm. This is the thing, is I feel very torn. I feel torn that I liked the episode. I liked the performances, specifically Pike. Man, he's the hero of this comedically.
So yes, comedically 100%. Just his little, like, walk up and then walk off.
Yeah, that's amazing when he hears what they're like, when Spock has taken the ears off,
Yeah.
Metaphorically and literally.
Right.
And he just turns around and walks back. Yep. And like the best one is in the background because they don't even acknowledge it. He goes to leave the transporter room, and the door's shut in front of him, and he just starts looking up at, like, in confusion, like, why is this? And he's just trying to leave, and the room won't let him. Meanwhile, he's having a conversation with his mother.
Oh my gosh, I missed that.
Oh, it's the best part. Go back and watch it. You
right.
have to go back and watch. It's pure comedy.
Right. Like, he's trapped in this room full of awkwardness. Right.
Yeah. Like, he needs to leave desperately, and the room just won't let him. It's great. And it's all happening in the background. Never is the camera specifically on him.
Right. So I wonder if, like, that was the best take of Ethan Peck, and, like, they didn't even notice, or they were like, this is funny, so we're leaving it in. Because, like, that seems more like the door crew that do the opening and closing of the doors. Like,
if that's what the director told him to do, and everybody just went with it,
right?
It's the most amazing bit of television that has ever happened.
Yeah.
If the director was like, okay, I want you to shut the doors on him when he tries to leave, and we're going to see what happens. Okay, right. Action, and Pike, what's his real name? Anson Mount just went with it.
Right.
Like, he's just kind of looking around. So good. I mean, he was the funniest part. I laughed out loud every time he was on screen.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But sorry, go ahead. You were
Well,
gonna
but
say.
to that point, it was also kind of frustrating because, like, yes, it was done for comedic intent, but Kirk thinks on his feet, and I feel like Pike has previously thought on his feet much faster than in this episode, where he was stumbling over his words and trying to recall like the ancient sacred earth tradition. Like he threw himself into a situation before he knew what to do with it.
Well, wait a minute. Let's be clear here. This is not Pike's problem, right? Right. This is not a diplomatic urgent emergency with some race who
Okay,
wants to blow
sure.
Earth up.
All right.
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 Like this is not his problem.
Right.
Like he is donating his time, every moment of it.
Yeah.
And he's just trying to think on his feet. And he says something like he doesn't want to offend anybody.
Mm-hmm.
He just wants to get out of this so he can make his pasta. Be left alone.
Make a sauce. We don't really care
Right,
about the
make
pasta.
some sauce. Yeah.
Just, yeah,
Like, and then
smash
he's
up
gonna
those
crack
tomatoes.
open some Trader Joe's pre-made linguine.
That's fair. Yeah, he's using a totally different part of his brain where he is not
Yeah.
trying to be the diplomat. He's just trying to help a friend. Sure. Okay.
Right. And maybe just morbid curiosity is
Right. Just
driving this.
slowly stirring his sauce. And he's like, this takes time. Like, don't just ignore me. I'm just here. Just listening.
Right. And I think he liked cooking for them, even though maybe he knew that they weren't going to like it or eat it. And nobody else eats any. He creates this whole spread that we see in the background. And they're like, no, thanks. We're just going to go do the thing.
Oh, I
He's
know.
like, oh,
Yep.
okay.
Right.
Yeah. He's my hero in this. I think there's a reason why he's who he is. Like why he's so great because he's basically the Michael Bluth. Right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's the one, like the reactor to everything. Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah. But anyway, so I'm torn because I liked it, but I also didn't like it because I felt like it was a distraction from, or rather a missed opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know where I come down on this. I don't know how I like it. I like it, but I don't like it. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, I think this comes down to our criteria. Like it wasn't a proper Star Trek episode. So for that, you kind of feel like it was, it was lacking because it was. But like you said, all the character acting was on point and the comedic bits were there. And even the emotional moments were there. It just, the two things mixed together didn't work well. It's like chocolate and jelly.
Chocolate and jelly?
Yeah, like I was gonna do peanut butter and jelly, peanut butter and chocolate, and I got to chocolate and jelly.
Oh, it's funny. Like just because one is compatible with one, it's not compatible with the other one. Although they have jelly-filled chocolates.
They
So what are you
do,
talking
yeah. And like, did you say what are you talking about?
Yeah.
You agree with me up until you think of a like one that negates my argument,
Well, yeah.
and you're like, whatever, that's fucking ridiculous.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't eat that stuff, but I know that others do. It's not uncommon. Or
You haven't
unheard
had
of.
like Turkish Delight or the orange gel chocolate covered dark chocolate orange gel things? Like
No, I don't like my fruit and my
man.
chocolate together, to be
those are
honest.
so good. Or like chocolate covered cherries? You don't like those? Or chocolate covered
That's
strawberries?
all right. I mean, they're all right. I don't. It's normally too sweet. It's normally like super sweet chocolate.
Okay,
And
right.
I don't like my chocolate super sweet, and I just don't like. I guess what it is, because normally the jellies and that stuff is like sweet stuff. And
Sure.
I like my chocolate bitter.
So right, so you should try you should try the the Trader Joe's dark chocolate orange slices if you haven't yet. Those are like a perfect blend of like dark chocolate and citrusy and like just a touch of sweet. Like it's so good.
I thought you were gonna say it's the perfect blend of dark chocolate and asshole, so you would like it quite a bit.
Of bitter and asshole, yeah. It's like right up your right in your wheelhouse.
Right up my wheelhouse. So,
Sorry.
what were we talking about? Oh, what is like chocolate and jelly? Things that are delicious.
Just the dramatic parts of this episode were great, and the comedic parts of this episode were great, but they didn't fuse well enough together for you to be laughing one moment and crying the other, and like completely understanding how you got there. It felt like you were laughing at the joke and then you were crying at the dramatic moment, but they didn't really segue into the other, and it didn't feel disjointed. I thought the pacing of the episode was pretty good, but just tonally these scenes did not blend well together.
Yeah. Yeah, they were almost like, as you said, they should have been switched.
Mm-hmm.
The A plot should have been communicating with this amazingly interesting race. And as a side effect,
Yeah.
Spock loses his mojo.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to try and get that back as a side thing, not as the main thing. Like, as much as I enjoyed the dinner, as much as I enjoyed Pike, it just shouldn't have been in there.
Right.
It shouldn't have happened.
Right.
Like, maybe T'Pring is visiting for something, right?
Well, right. Like Luoxana, whenever she comes on, she is a background character, and we get the moments with her, and they are delightful because Majel Barrett knows how to chew the scenery, and it's just so much fun to watch her be this ostentatious character. And so to have these scenes where Spock is struggling with this dinner, and it's little flashes, like maybe she comes in like the beginning of the second act, and the rest of the episode is Spock trying to struggle through this 2-day ceremony, and that we only get 90 seconds, 2 minutes, maybe 3 in those scenes where he is struggling, and then it goes back to the other issues. Like, we get just that spot of comedy, and then we get back to the drama.
Right. And it's not like we need to see the whole ceremony. We didn't see the whole one in this episode anyway, but we saw enough of it where there could be hijinks enough.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to see it. It's not like we see him messing up something we don't know what the rules are anyway.
Right.
Because they have to basically do the thing, but first tell us what the thing is and what the rules are before they do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the scene is twice as long. Just have the aftermath.
Right.
And to have a ridiculous, like, recount ridiculous things that they did is like the headstand was only 5 minutes and 75 seconds.
Right.
Vulcans have an 80-second minute, by the way.
I was talking to somebody about their kid, and they were like, he's 1 year and 15 months.
Whoa.
I know. And I was like, so 2-ish?
Yeah. You just walk away at that point.
Right.
Just walk away. But yeah, I just don't like the hijinks stuff. So, I mean, people probably love it. I think it's very highly rated, this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And because people want to see it. Like, they were right. I get it. They were right about doing an episode like this because Peck?
Ethan
Peck? Walter Peck. He does a great job. Everybody does a great job. Everybody loves comedy. That's the problem, is that they're now giving the audience, the non-Trekkies, what they want. And they're leaving the Trekkies in the dust a little bit.
Well, kind of. But like I said, like, Trek has always had these ridiculous episodes.
Yeah, you're right.
But when there's 23 episodes in a season, when you have 3 episodes that are crazy hijinks, that's not even 20% of the show. When you have 10 episodes and 3 of them are hijinks, that's over 25% of the series or the episode, the season.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's exactly 30%.
Good job.
That's been Math Minute, everybody.
Oh, those are back?
Only briefly.
For a minute.
Yep. 1 minute. And 80 seconds.
Just under 2 minutes.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought. I don't even remember what we're talking about. What are we talking about? Yeah, but not a Star Trek episode. It's not a real Star Trek episode. This is just fun. They're just having fun. It's like this is like when they would bring in a video into econ class that was about economics, but you're like, this is a video, so what? It's like easy. It's like an easy day,
right?
Yeah. Versus when we're actually doing economics,
which is kind of sad because like there really was there were a few ethical and moral dilemmas that characters faced. Spock with whether or not he should tell T'Pring T'Pring, and the other characters. I mean, they jumped on the bandwagon pretty quick, but the other characters kind of being reluctant to help Chapel until she guilt tripped them into going with her.
Yeah, she makes them risk their life,
right,
to save her boyfriend.
Which again, like it typically, and I mean, maybe this is the trope thing, so it's kind of nice that they didn't do it, but I also feel like it happens often enough both ways that both are kind of tropes. But Chapel would go alone into the shuttle, and her friends would come out and say, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I'm doing this, and don't try to stop me." And they're like, "No, we're here to help you," type thing.
And you don't know how to fly the ship. So
Right. You're a nurse, not a pilot.
yeah. Yeah.
That would have been a great moment.
That'd have been a good
Like
moment.
just a nice little like throwback to the original series, you know.
Right. Well, there's a moment. So it just felt like it took too long because we knew that they were all going to go anyway. And that's a thing. It's like, well, I guess, is it interesting in how we get there? If we know they're going to go through the wormhole with the ship together, but there's reluctance on somebody, how do you get there? How do you get them there? And is it interesting? And if it's not interesting, all you're doing is wasting time.
Right.
Because there's a moment where she says, well, when have I ever been the one to say no to a challenge?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the scene should have ended. Except then there's like, and then Nurse Chapel's like, so we're doing this? And they're like, we're doing this. It's like, yeah, we got that.
Right.
We inferred from her saying that she's not going to just turn the ship around and park it in the ship.
It would have been great. Like, when have I ever said no to a challenge? Hard cut to the shuttle and be like, wow, she said no.
Yeah. Always, I guess.
Right.
Or she just ejection seats herself out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just took too long. There's a lot of that stuff. We're coming across that a lot. I think we came across that in Picard, where they establish something that is clear. It's not even like a tough inference.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that they say that obviously means they're going to do whatever they're going to do. And then they have whoever is in the scene turn to the camera and say, now we're going to go do this thing.
Right. Well, they just did that in the last episode with Among the Lotus Eaters with Strange New Worlds, where Pike turned around and he's like, we're going to the castle.
That's right. And they did it with the Picard episode, right? Where something happens with Riker and he turns to the camera and says, let's go get him, or something like that.
Yeah.
Let's go get him.
I think that's what he said. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go get him.
It's great writing.
I think that's the name of the episode. So, okay. Not a genuine Star Trek episode, but it is a good episode.
Yeah, it was
So,
fun. But
good for you.
There are two more things that I want to touch on. Just the kind of the missed moment, where like there was no sci-fi explored in the episode. Like the aliens that you're talking about, it was magic.
They're space clouds.
Yeah. Yep. And that was my other point.
Yeah.
Yep. Glittery space clouds, which glad they're making a comeback. Like when you have the technology to make glittery clouds, way more expensive and fancy
Glittery?
looking. Yeah.
They use so much glitter.
Did you see Ortega's like actually dodge the glitter cloud?
I felt like they were dodging it. Like it was unclear in terms of geography of where they were and stuff. So, but they all dodged it, didn't they?
Oh, I don't know. I definitely saw Ortega's. Like it kind of materialized in front of her, and so she kind of dodged down and like went around it to get out of the way, which I thought was kind of funny. But yeah, sorry. No.
So sorry to go back. So speaking of Ortega's, she says right before they go into the wormhole, after they've convinced her to do something that she wasn't going to say no to anyway, she says, "Hold on to your butts."
Mm-hmm.
And the only other time I've heard anybody say that ever,
Jurassic
on planet
Park?
Earth, is Jurassic Park.
Right.
So it must be a reference, right? Because it's not something that people say. It's just something they wrote down in the Jurassic Park script. So, number one, that's an odd time for a Jurassic Park reference. It'd be great if, as the shuttlecraft zooms toward the wormhole, that you just see in the background like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, like,
Or just as the ship is flying away, you just hear Chapel just kind of, was that Jurassic Park?
No, they're humming Jurassic Park tune. And I thought, so she's saying like, hold on to your butt, right? Like hold on to your behind. But I thought when, what's his name? Samuel L. Jackson was saying it in Jurassic Park, he was referring to cigarette butts, like hold on to them because it's about to get windy. So you should hold on to your cigarette butt because he's smoking famously in all of those scenes.
Yes.
So is that not what he was talking about?
I always assumed that it was a double meaning, and that's why he said it.
Oh yeah. I guess he is a smart person.
Like if you're not smoking, hold on to your butts, and if you are smoking, hold on to your butts.
Right.
In
any case, a strange time for that kind of reference.
Also, to that scene specifically, like there's a part where Uhura makes a comment about anything that's more than a light year away, she won't be able to connect because of the interference. And that line baffles me so much because I assumed that the ship was in really close orbit to this planet and not a light year away. Or I don't know how big that planet is if it was going to take them a light year to get to that black hole.
Yeah, I don't know. I maybe the Enterprise was farther away than we thought it was.
Right?
And because they have those, I think those shuttlecraft are warp capable.
Yeah, they are. They totally are.
So it would take very little time to go a light year, I guess. Would it? I actually don't know. How long does it take to go a light year at warp 1?
I don't know. And well, and I do know also that the warp system, like the warp scaling, changed, I think, between the original series and Next Generation. It changed at some point in the Star Trek timeline. Like as technology advanced, warp 9 became like a warp 3 or something like that.
Oh. Well, in any case,
Yeah.
they could have done it. It kind of bumped me as well. I thought, oh, they're much farther away.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't really explore it, so I thought it was just technobabble, like orphaned technobabble that really had no
reason.
Yeah.
So there wasn't really any sci-fi explored. Like there was the whole Chapel trying to figure out how to fuse the Vulcan and human DNA again. But I felt like everything that she was saying was based on current scientific experience and research. Like I could be completely wrong about that, and they just hit the nail on the head with everything she was saying. But when she was talking about like sequencing the genome, the Vulcan proteins would just dissolve. You know.
Yeah, I felt like they needed a ticking clock, and that's how they accomplished that. They needed it to be, we can't sit on our butts on this or sit on our hands.
Right. We can totally sit on our butts. Like that's the thing that we can do.
Quite often.
Yeah.
So that's what I took that as. Like all of the science fiction in this show was just a means to an end.
Well, yes, but it didn't feel like science fiction. And maybe that's how good it was, you know, in which case I would happily retract that this wasn't a proper Star Trek episode, and it was based on...
No. Declined.
But if there's... I guess you're right, because like even if that sci-fi was explained, like there wasn't, they were like, we need the solution from the aliens, and then it just cuts and she's like, I have the solution.
Yeah, they didn't go through it because
Right.
they didn't have enough time, and it was an hour-long episode.
Yeah.
So okay, we agree that it's not a proper Star Trek episode, but a good episode nonetheless.
Yes.
So okay,
All right.
What are we watching? What are we watching tomorrow?
Picard, and it's episode 6, I think. Are we almost 60% of the way through?
Episode 6. I have a feeling we're going to start. I mean, we better start to be seeing the rest of the crew here in a minute, right?
Right. Well, I know that we just got Worf involved. We got Worf in with Riker and Picard, and is that it? Yeah.
Yep. I have a feeling we're going to see Janeway at a certain point because he invoked her name.
Well, I'm pretty sure we're gonna. Oh my gosh! So not only on Netflix did the blurb writers not watch the episodes, only the cold opens, but apparently the person who puts in the thumbnail does not work with the people who write the blurbs, because the blurb says, so it's episode 6 of season 3 of Picard. Now on the run, Picard and the skeleton crew of the USS Titan must break into Starfleet's most top-secret facility to expose a plot that could destroy the Federation. Picard must turn to the only soul in the galaxy who can help, an old friend. And the thumbnail is Geordi LaForge.
Janeway. Oh. I was going to say Janeway. It's like, what?
Right?
Wait a minute. Go back a second.
Okay.
We have to go back to Strange New Worlds.
Okay.
Remember when Carol Kane was on the show? And
Right?
she was like a new crew member. She was like the new engineer person.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, she's not.
No.
That's not a thing anymore.
Right. Yeah, that's not a thing.
She's going to be in the last episode. That's going to be it.
Yep.
Sorry. You said an old friend. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, old friend. Right.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, I'm excited to see that, to see Geordi LaForge. When they say old friend, it's like, okay, well, you're not like doing anything. You're not having the effect you think you're having on me. Like, oh, old friend.
Right. All right.
Okay.
Well,
I've been Paul.
I've been Jonathan.
Odo? Is that you? And this has been The Measure of an Episode.
But you already knew that.
Is that Odo? Or is that Chain Wagon?